So, the playtesting is going on. It started. I've had feedback from a couple of people so far. I'm waiting for more to come in, and as expected, the people applying through the Steam playtest have so far not provided me with anything. So that was kind of worthless. There might still in the future, right? It's only been a handful of days. And maybe I just need to give more people access. But I gave 50 people access just to see like what kind of breakdown do we get as far as like, do I get 5 people, which would be like 10% of people responding within the first week. And so far it's been 0 people from that. So I'm just going to give it a little bit more time. Maybe open up another like 50 spots to see, again, mostly what kind of like percentage breakdown we get over the first like week, over the first month, and then we'll see. But while that is going on, I'm not going to be touching anything really to do with the purple dungeon, because that is the thing that is currently getting tested, as well as like general gameplay stuff. That said though, one of the playtests I've seen seemingly didn't try all the doors in here yet. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to set all of these to being black. So that it's very obvious that you're supposed to go through this one, because all these other ones are just more or less entirely blocked off. So just going to do that so that I can update the Steam build at some point. Probably tomorrow. Hello everybody joining in. So yeah, we've got this entire purple coded dungeon. We're not going to be touching that at all today. What we're going to be doing is we're going to get started on everything to do with the next dungeon over, which is going to be red color coded. So I already have a rough layout of what all of these are going to like be like, but this is very, very rough. This is just like a spatial layout kind of, and that's it. From here on out, we're going to, well, have to make these into actual levels, and I don't know what we're going to do for that, because looking at this, I don't think that the spatial layout... Oh, I also need to replace every single door, because at some point in the development, I lost all my doors. Still don't know how that happened. So I need to replace all of those as well. That's going to be fun. We'll get to that. But yeah, if we go through this, you will see that this is a fairly like small area, and I think most of these end up being just a little bit too small to be realistically a like playable area. Sorry for a topic question, but I can't make a simple trapdoor mechanism, Prince of Persia style. Do you know which could look for refresh your memory or get a better idea? I don't know how Prince of Persia does it, but I like a very simple trapdoor type mechanism would be maybe something like this, right? Where you open this up, thank you very much. Where you have a static mesh that is the trapdoor, and then you have a very thin box collision for like overlapping on top of it, and in the variables, you just add one variable for whether or not it is up at the moment, so whether or not it's activatable. And then on begin overlap, you just check whether or not it is the player character, or you can complicate this a little bit more if you want to. Then you check whether or not it is currently in the up state, then you give it a delay, and then you flip it down. And flip down is just setting the up state to being false. And in my case, this is just a timeline going from 0 to 1 in about a quarter of a second. That loops between 0 and -90, and then that loop output is going to go into the Y rotation of the static mesh, or actually of the scene component that the static mesh is parented to, right? So we have the static mesh. I just made an empty scene component that I can change around and I can animate as like a hinging point for that. And then once the timeline is finished, depending on the switch direction, we either, if it was forward, so if it was just triggered to go down, I wait a certain amount of time, 2 seconds in this case, and then we reverse this timeline from the end so that it pops back up. And if it was played in reverse, so backward, we just set it to being up again so that it can be re-triggered again. That's a very basic like trapdoor setup as I have it over here. You can do a bunch of stuff to like do other things with it depending on like what you need, but that's the basic setup that I have. Anyway, let's go to my block out tools. Needs to be colored red. Is that a good red color? Maybe a little bit too pink. You can actually just set this to be like full red channel. There we go. And then we're gonna just put it in the transform of this box. Ideally, is what I would like. You would let me, but you won't. So then I guess we just copy over the rotation and we'll do everything else manually. That's fine. Now what do we do? First and foremost, I do set this to 100 units distance. I'm just gonna start off. I think we're gonna need to make, again, most of these levels significantly bigger. But I'm not entirely sure. I'm just kind of winging it as we go, to be honest with you. So roughly the same size as the room we just had, and I think it's important to just walk around in that room in a moment. So I'm going to make this first room, because everything else that we make off of this is of course going to kind of how big this one is. So I think just getting a decent sense of scale for the rest. So all of this is now in the persistent world. Could be in a level of its own, but I already made all the streaming levels for this like 3 months ago. Or starting with it today, rather. So this is in Dungeon 2, and it's the entry. So let's move these actors to current level. Cool. And BP level door. Be a little annoying to place down, but we'll... There we go. And then we'll set this to just being like entirely black, and then we'll set red to being fully true, so that it has red lighting. And this goes to the central hub. And then in here, I will just move this back a little temporarily, because I'm going to have to put this back in here when I build this out again for Steam. Because I don't want people to walk around in this part of the game yet, because they'll get lost. Entry. We should, I think now, I have a save file on this. How loud is that? That's not too loud. That's pretty good. Let's my voice balancing just in the microphone. Oh, that might be a little loud actually. Let's maybe a bit better. Okay, so now if we go into here, this is the size of this room, right? And this is too small. Like you can't do anything in here. So I think what we're gonna do. I think what we're going to do is we'll move this back quite a way. We delete this for the time being. I'm actually going to add in a staircase. So linear stairs. I don't know what the difference is between linear stairs and linear stairs. This probably just doesn't have like a little handle to it, right? Yeah. No gizmo is no use for me. Yep. Okay. So what we do here is we add in this staircase. And it's gonna have more. But the thing is, I want this to get me in a place, effectively, where the majority of this dungeon works upward. And that is partly because it's going to prevent any overlap with previous dungeon and the next dungeon. Just for my own sanity. Of course, these levels don't actually exist at the same time, so they can overlap if need be. But just, I like being able to see what's going on. And there being no overlap will probably help with that. And also, I believe the map that I made, the software that I used for it, Inkscape, for some reason I need to reinstall. The installation got corrupted for some reason. So I can actually open like the vector art I made for it. But I'm pretty sure that this is supposed to be like the religious, like church area. That is massively obsessed with going up. Because the entire like city, the entire civilization that used to live here was an underground civilization, and this like religion was obsessed with if there's rock on every side, there's got to be like one side that we want to dig toward, and that's going to be the up direction for fucking reasons. I suppose if you lived your entire life underground, it wouldn't necessarily. That's actually an interesting idea. If you lived your entire life underground, right? You wouldn't have the context of the above ground being in the up direction. The above ground as a concept, who's to say that that's not in the down direction or any of the like on your level 360 degrees around directions? Huh, that's interesting. I'm still going to go with the up direction because that's just what I'm going to do. So if you disagree, fuck you. Okay, so the number of steps definitely has to be a bunch more. That's good for now. So it also kind of makes sense that this area goes up in most of its level design. So I made this like fairly, again, too small layout of the dungeon in a fairly flat manner. I think what we're going to end up doing is this is the main central area of the... There's one level that's missing, I believe. So supposed to be one area. Hold on, let me unload this real quick. supposed to be one area, I think, like over here that's not going to load it in, because this is supposed to connect up to a box. Which one would that be? The doors don't exist anymore, so let's just... There we go. So this is supposed to be a... to this dungeon. Because this is the mine shaft that goes up, right? That's the place where like all of these people used to like dig up in the hopes of finding some kind of surface to break through. So it makes sense that this would be higher up to begin with. And then is all going up toward that, I think. For the most part. I think there's going to be one exception, and that is... Oh boy, I don't remember which one is supposed to be the boss room. Boss room? So that can be like halfway up the mine shaft or something like that. And then the mine shaft itself is obviously going to be like a fair bit taller. The platforming challenge for this, which obviously this is too small to build any actual platforming challenge inside, so it's going to have to be bigger, etc, etc, etc. But this is just like the general layout that I vastly underestimated at the time. For all that, let's disable this for the time being, and then, well, I guess we do want to have like a little bit of just like walking space. Before going into the actual like... So that way we can get away with this being a fairly empty level, with not that much happening, I think. Because all it needs to do is it needs to just take us up. And beyond that, it doesn't really need to do much. Nice for me, because that means that I don't have to do that much to make that. Right? And I might even make it more narrow, because as I make it more narrow, the height of this be like proportionally greater. So if we cut this in half, suddenly that staircase seems a lot taller comparatively. It doesn't like actually become taller. It doesn't take longer to walk up. It's just a more narrow hallway feels longer when you, at least when you initially see it, because humans are just bad at spaces. All that is on the other side of this. And making this more narrow is a thing that we can very much quite easily, so I'm not too worried about like getting those proportions like all the way nailed down right now. But assumedly this then goes into let's collapse both of these actually, so I only have these to work with. 2-2, the V-shaped hallway. So that would be oh, I accidentally made that invisible. Well, that's not great. Let me go ahead and fix that. I just made invisible to make that issue. But it surely can't be that much work to find. If I just this shows everything, not just all the visible stuff. Okay, there we go, I found it. So yeah, this is just supposed to be going up at a staircase, going back down, but I guess what we're gonna do is one staircase down and one staircase up initially. I guess the way that we're gonna do this instead is this is just gonna stay on level. Because let's see, I think this might actually line up fairly well without me meaning it to. That would be amazing. Because this lines up with the maze, right? So we come in here, we go through there. This is all on a level ground. And then, like, going toward the boss fight in this, we go down, 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 because we go deeper down into the tomb. But then the thing that lines up here is actually like the upper level of the maze we have here, for which we like jump up and platform up. And I know that it doesn't like quite match up as far as like actual height goes, but it doesn't need to. But that way, if that is roughly on level with the height, at least implied, of going up this staircase, that actually like adds up fairly well, I think. So let's make this V-shaped hallway where we go left, we stay on level, and right goes up another staircase. And then this room can just be like a sort of semi-hub area. Where nothing like much happens. Because the idea is that this is the area where the church and the graveyard area, the tombs, would touch. So presumably this is just a connective room. Maybe I can put like a couple of zombies in here or something. A connective room to like pull people through to like bury them. And then this room back here, I believe, can then... I think that was the original intention. I don't know, but that's what we're going to go with. From our studios investments, no, I'm just like one dude. So yeah, indie, solo, whatever you want to call it. Somebody who just altogether likes to take on way too much work is what it really comes down to. Okay, so then how in the fucking world do we make this happen? I'm gonna just hide this box for the time being. Because this needs to be a... Let me think real quick. First things first. Copy over a door and place that in. And then we definitely also like copy this thing over to make a wall with. Just so that we... Good start. Doesn't quite line up. Not the most important thing right now. Wall number 1. I think it's good to make this relatively narrow at the start, probably. This might be a little bit too narrow, don't get me wrong. And then we need kind of like a V shape, like a split in the road, right? Which I guess would be a 45-degree angle, yeah. That makes sense. I wish I could, I guess I... less centralized now. So we do this and then 45 degrees and then we copy it over and we do 45 degrees and that's kind of, yeah. That kind of does it, doesn't it? That's actually pretty good, I think. This one over and... I mean, it doesn't quite line up. Which makes sense because I'm sticking to like 100 unit intervals and that's not how like geometry works. But we can make the line up good enough. We're gonna need to like model this stuff at some point anyway. And then this has nothing going for it, so there's just straight on, straight on. And then we... I guess if we just like do this... magically line itself up, but of course I'm not lucky enough to have that happen. Okay, and this is going to have a staircase, but I don't know, this doesn't seem like it's... hold on, before... so there's a wire for... oh, no. Let's disable this real quick. Yeah. There is it, because we can... What is the... no mouse? There we go. Yeah, from there to there is 1240, and from there to there is 1340. So this is 100 units too much that... oh, or 50 units actually too much in that direction. But all that should be fairly easy to fix if we can just... okay. 45 degrees. And then just... 50 degrees that way, and then 45 degrees back. And now it should be... that seems more symmetrical, doesn't it? I think that's pretty symmetrical. Let's go back into wireframe mode. This point to there is 1275. That point to there is 1309. Is that just me clicking bad? I don't think it is. Well, it might have actually been, because this is now 12 3/8. Hello? So the other way around. Yeah, it's probably good enough. What does it look like when we just look at this from the player's perspective? That's the most important question, right? And that kind of looks... I also think that we're going to... yeah, we're not going to have this as one big thing to deal with. So what we're going to do is I'm going to move it over here. So how's everybody? Well, nobody's doing nothing, because the like 8 people that were watching a moment ago have all left. Okay, I was going to ask how are you guys doing with your... well, that's kind of a useless... still, if anybody's still here hanging out and YouTube just has like bad reporting or something like that, do feel free to let me know, well, how you are, how your projects are doing, whatever you want to talk about, really. I'm still not going to do this with rotation, I don't think. Because if I rotate this, works is with world align textures. And then everything is... Maybe that's what we want to do. It's all for testing purposes anyway. I'm still here. Good. Oh, and now YouTube is catching back up. So it's back up to 5. So it's probably just... let's make this wall a little bit longer. At work on a break. That... You know what? Actually, we can just make this like go halfway. And then another thing that goes the other half. No, we're good to go. Yeah, man, I've been actually days with work, which has been nice. It's been giving me a little bit more room to like think about well, the game and that kind of stuff, while also just like having a bit of a relaxed time. Because the thing is, right, the holidays are supposed to be my like 2 weeks off that I get in a year. But even then, they're so fucking full of everybody suddenly being off work and wanting to like get something from me, mostly my time and attention. That at the end of the 2 week like holiday period, I'm not very well rested, and then like the new year starts back up and work starts back up. So I've actually been quite lucky that work has been a little bit slow to get back up and running. Of course, it does need to like ramp up at some point because like money needs to be made. But I'm quite glad for the extra like week or so that I get to just enjoy myself. And then next week, I think it's next week, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth I will release, and I don't care if I have a lot of responsibility for work. I will not be there. We'll be playing Final Fantasy. I'll still be streaming. Don't you worry about that, but they're all going to be fairly close to. So maybe this is not the best week to take it easy, because I'm going to be taking it easy on work in like another 2 weeks again. But being responsible is boring, so screw all that, right? I prefer being fun. That's centralized enough for me. I already have a staircase that's properly color-coded, so I'm just gonna yoink that, and hopefully I actually copied it. I did. Having a missing staircase in one of the levels, which is not a good time. Does this line up? It does line up, huh? Didn't look like it would. I don't usually catch you live. I mean, aside from like wanting to watch or not, like time zones are a thing, and people have like their own schedules and stuff. But I'm glad that you're here now. So, doing games for years now, but with Unreal Engines, there's always new stuff. I know, man. They go so fast. They go way too fast for me to even be able to make videos as they release their stuff sometimes. And those are videos that tend to do fairly well, so I should prioritize that a little bit more, but it's difficult, man. Most of my time is spent on work, game devs in a sort, but I do have my personal projects I think of doing. I do like do personal projects. I don't do that well when I have to do other people's shit, if I'm being honest with you. So day to day, I do work on other people's shit. Don't get me wrong, but it's kind of miserable at times. Not always. Some projects are fun. But most of the time, I prefer to work on. The ever-elusive Sim and Metroidvania mashup? How does that work? That sounds either intriguing or insane. Or somewhere in between, or both. It sounds really interesting now. Oh, these don't line up. That sounds like quite a project. Let's see. It's annoying that I don't have the map anymore in working order anyway. Because at this point, I am not entirely sure what this is supposed to... I think this is supposed to line up with this room down here. Yeah, so actually we can move these things around fairly easily. Oh. Don't deselect stuff. So yeah, let's do that so that they all keep relatively in place. I just don't know at this point like what this is supposed to. This is supposed to connect up to somewhere around here. And this we probably like placeholders just for like my frame of reference, by the way. If we just do something a little like this, then that starts to make a little bit more sense. I don't know, but I'm gonna figure it out. I mean, that's a really cool way of just working, right? Is look, these two things I like, and I'm just gonna mash them together, and we'll see how it ends up going. It is not unlike what I'm doing, to be fair. I'm just like, I like hack and slash action RPGs, so I'm gonna make one. How I'm gonna do that, but I'm gonna do it. And while I'm doing it, that's what the playtests are for that are currently ongoing now. So far. Because I might have picked a genre that not particularly amazing at, like animation and VFX. Neither of which are my strong suit. But hey, there's nothing if not just learning on your feet. I probably should have done something that is a code based, rather than just. I should have made a sim game, because that's actually the kind of thing that my skill set lends itself well to. What the? Oh, that makes sense. And pretend like. That works, right? Back on the level design grind. I know, right? It is. It's another thing that I'm like, I'm not as bad at it as, oh, fuck. This is easy. I'm not as bad at level design as I am at some other things, admittedly, but I'm still not great. Okay. I still don't know if this is properly centered. Well, that should be on this line if it is, I think, yeah. Oh, but then it's pretty close. Close enough to the point where 20 units. Not even 20 units. One of these is 10, right? That's probably fine. There's some overlap between the two if you think about it. But I want to give it a go. I mean, there's definitely a lot of opportunity to like make at that point you'd almost make like an adventurer tycoon game or something like that, right? Where the Metroidvania dungeon, maybe even like slightly roguelike-ish, right? Like randomly generated, has like, well, maybe don't do it randomly generated, actually. But where the dungeon has like specific like object that gives specific like values to specific stats, and your AI goes through it, and you just prime your AI for going through it, and that's like at that point you're like a adventurer manager tycoon. That's the kind of thing that my mind goes to like make the two overlap. Here's a question for you. What type of AI do you prefer? I saw you did some behavior tree stuff. What any state trees? I like behavior trees because they have really strong debugging within the engine. Last time I looked at specifically state trees, because I like state trees as well, because they're a really cool concept where you get effectively the opportunity for a state machine, but still with a tree-like structure if you want to. I do very, very much like that. Debugging, like last time I looked at it, wasn't really quite there. Like, the amazing thing about behavior trees, and it's kind of an unfair comparison, right? But this thing obviously don't have a BT asset. But you know what a behavior tree looks like. I don't need to show you. Why does this not connect? The amazing thing about behavior trees is that you can see them working, which makes debugging. And state trees, I don't really think had that, or maybe even still. So that's less than ideal, I would say. But if they've updated that, that might be worth looking more into. I like behavior trees for trees make a lot more sense, I think. Hello all the way from India. Oh, wow. Hello. Hello from Europe. Like making your code is one thing, but then being able to like deal with it as it implodes upon itself is, I would argue, just about as important. So where are we? Okay, so this then moves to somewhere around here. How does that now line up with, I don't care about system level. How does that now line up with the purple stuff? Okay, spatially it doesn't quite make sense because the door that's gonna exist here. So that doesn't quite line up. But it doesn't need to be perfect, right? It just needs to be make some amount of sense. And I think that will do it for this. So we probably... That's kind of going to be it. So that's in... For some reason, that's 212. Sure. Long center room. I'm so good at giving things names. Using a custom system, using utility AI and debugging is fun. I mean... At least if you're debugging your own stuff, it's your own stuff. We can still make this make a little bit more spatial sense. So if something goes wrong, it actually just straight up is your own fault. Either disheartening or comforting, depending. Won't be getting mad at the engine when things go, which I don't know. I think that's in a way that's kind of comforting, the way that it's something that you can fix, right? If something that the engine itself is just kind of quirky with, which Unreal sometimes is a little quirky with some things. Sometimes it just means that a solution that you came up with just doesn't work. Just gotta find another solution. The more customized your solutions are, the less they rely on like in-engine tools, the less you're getting out of the fact that you're using Unreal Engine, but the more control you have on your own, like on your own merits. It's a little bit. But it also means that you do gotta make your own debugging tools, because if you make something and you don't make the debugging, but again, if you don't make your own debugging tools, you don't know. It's your own goddamn fault, isn't it? I like to not reinvent the wheel if I don't have to. Well, that's not true. Sometimes I do. But when I do, it's mostly for educational purposes, because I want to, like, at least somewhat understand how things work when I use them, instead of just using them, and if they getting, like, angry at them for no reason. So like in the quest system that I just like made that course on, right? We just had the full upload for that. I know that I made an entire custom tree view widget, while Unreal Engine itself has a built-in tree view system for widgets. I know that. But I specifically chose to do a custom one so that people following along would get a little bit more familiar with the recursive nature of like how all these like objectives and sub-objectives and stuff in the quest system itself works, because that is so fundamentally important to the system. And I'm sure that my solution is a little bit less performant than Unreal's built-in, but so yeah, this is the next world. I made a like very rough layout with just like box brushes, which very quickly is turning out to be all of these are way too small to hold actual levels in, like 3 or 4 months ago. Like when I made the video, I spent 12 hours straight developing my game. Like that's on our channel, something like that. I put this together to finish out the day, I think. So it kind of sucks. So I'm using that as a template now to actually put down proper like box brushes and make them a little bit more playable. We're probably not going to get into a little like gameplay related playable. I can't talk. Not a lot of like gameplay related stuff today, I don't think. But maybe we will. We'll see. Do you cut out the actual doors later in modeling mode, or are you using a new level for each room? Yeah, so each level, the way it works is just so that not too much is loaded at the same time. If I go into like viewing mode, you will see that, well, that thing exists in the persistent level for some reason. I don't think it needs to, but it does. So the only thing loaded at the moment is the room that I'm inside, right? And if I go into like this door over here, it loads in this room, and then this will be the only, again, except for this thing, this will be the only room that's actually loaded in. So aside from like those down there and down there, this down here, T-posing, boss model down here, I don't know why. It's probably good to not have this in the persistent level though, because he does have an 8K texture, so that's probably not good for memory. But one room at a time. So that way I can go without having to worry too much about and like micro managing all the optimization stuff. Loaded when you leave one of the rooms is the basic idea. And these rooms themselves like don't have that much going on inside them. So aside from the fact that it is using global illumination and very much the game prefers hardware ray tracing if it can get it. Aside from that, it should all run fairly smoothly because it doesn't have like a lot going on at any given time. So that's what these doors do, right? Like this orange line here. It's got a, and it has this next level. It's the wrong thing. It's got this next level variable, and it uses that to decide, hey, do I have to load in when we overlap with this? And then when that level is loaded in, it checks, okay, in the level that exists now, what doors match the level that I was just in. So anytime I go into a level, it saves the name of that variable level to a variable. And then whenever a new lead to that last level that you were in, and if so, it's going to place you at the like little arrow thing here that corresponds to that door. So it automatically that way links up doors that physically lead to each other. And the loading screens in between are super short because, again, it doesn't have to load in that much. So much, in fact, that I artificially increase the length of the loading screen. Because if I don't do that, I think we can show that for just shits and giggles. I have this loading screen, right? If it will open up, where is it? It's on one of my screens somewhere, surely. Oh, it's over on OBS. There we go. So the loading screen, and at some point the loading screen is going to be a little bit more... it doesn't show anything. Why not? Yeah, that's a little weird. Anyway, at some point it's going to be a little more impressive than just black with a throbber on it. But yeah, it's got this fade in animation. And I don't even have... Oh, hold on. Doesn't seem like I have the delay in here. I probably have it in the game instance, in which case, don't panic. A lot happening here. But yeah, so I create a loading screen widget, I add it to the viewport, then I do some saving stuff, then I load the next level door stuff, I reset stuff, and then at some point in here, yeah, so once everything is loaded in, everything works, I set a delay for 1 second before I fade it out again. If I don't do that, I actually think it does need like a super short delay of at least 1 tick, but we'll see if it breaks. The actual speed at which these levels load in is that. It's instant. Right? Not quite instant, it's like 0.1 seconds. This is the actual length of how long the loading of these rooms takes. This is really jarring and annoying to look at, right? Like, nobody likes looking at all that. I could make this entirely seamless by loading the room that I'm in and then all the rooms that it leads to instead. That's, I believe, how games like Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2 and most of the Kingdom Hearts games up until 3 do it. They, as far as I understand, whenever you exit a room, it unloads everything. Whenever you enter a room, it only loads in that room and all the rooms that connect directly to it. And then when you exit it, it just updates it to like load in the new rooms that are now accessible and unload the rooms that are no longer accessible. I think, and the reason that I think that is because enemies in Kingdom Hearts respawn if you go 2 rooms away and then come back. So I'm fairly certain that that is just a quirk of how the level loading works in those games. That is a lot more complex. This works well enough, and in my case, I've actually recently implemented a more Souls-like enemy respawning thing, where if you kill an enemy, it won't respawn until you've hit a checkpoint and gone back. So I don't even like have all that going for it. But yeah, so the actual loading times are insanely fast. So I actually artificially increase it by a second, so that it's a little like less annoying to look at. Probably could do with less than a second, but it's that one value there that I can fine tune as I please. So it's... so yeah, this leads to 12. 2-2. Oh, it already leads to 2-2. That's fantastic. And then this will have a couple more doors eventually, but for the time being, that'll be it. Actually, no, this does have a door to the purple dungeon. So let's reload the purple stuff. I don't exactly know where it's supposed to be in... spatially, but I think the way that I mapped it out, or just a quick fade transition between rooms. The loading screen is neat, though gives you opportunity for notifications, room names. Yeah, so what I'm thinking is I kind of want to do the thing that they do in Kingdom Hearts 2 is where you enter a room, depending on the dungeon, it has like a it goes to a black screen instead of using a fade. What it does is it uses like a PNG cutout of a certain icon to like punch in and punch out of your black screen, essentially. I think I'd have to look at it. Do I have Kingdom Hearts 2 installed at the moment? I might. Probably. But let's see. Hello, Fortnite. And Hatsune Miku. Apparently that's a thing again. Where is my games? I hate the library. There we go. Do I have Kingdom Hearts installed? I think I do. So we can look at it real quick. Because I think it might fade to black. But then it has like for each different world, I believe it has a different icon, and then after the like fade in animation of the gameplay, actually, it's not fading. You'll see in a moment. It has a little like title screen of we're in this world and this is the name of this room, which in and of itself can do quite a bit of like semi-environmental storytelling, which I like. So I kind of want to take that approach to it, which means I'm going to need to make like a lot of images for that because it's all going to be like PNGs of the text. It's not actually going to be like a vector text, I don't think. So I just need to find somebody that's good at like calligraphy. Is what it comes down to. But that's future stuff. But yeah, it'll probably be PNG. So I don't have my controller hooked up right now, so I'm playing Kingdom Hearts with a... oh, we can just do it here. With mouse and keyboard, which is always a good time. Yep, okay. So, yeah, you see, it kind of does this punch in, punch out with that crown icon. And then when we get to the new room, it just says the name of the room and the name of the world. I kind of want to do this because I really like this. I'm using the button mappings from my own game to try to play this game, which obviously doesn't work. So I quite like that as a transition. Because realistically, you can see that my levels do load quick enough to the point where just like punching in, having a slight black screen for like a second, even less than a second, and then punching back out will totally work. That said though, I must admit that that is the loading speed from a... well, it's not actually on my M2, I don't think. It is on a SATA SSD, so it's not even like super fast as far as like loading from disk goes. It is on a fairly fast CPU though. So on lower end hardware, it might take a moment longer to load everything in. I don't know how much Unreal like level like, because at this point the difference in clock speed between like low, mid and high tier CPUs for like gaming CPUs and workstation CPUs, as long as you don't go like server CPU, the difference in clock speed is not that much. It's mostly these days a difference in core count. Obviously, there is some clock speed difference, but it's the difference between like 3.5 and like 4.5 gigahertz, right? So that's a substantial increase of like 30%. But still, 3.5 gigahertz is very fast. So I don't know how like multi-threaded that is. So I don't know how fast it'll load on lower end CPUs, but I think it still loads pretty much instantly. Yeah, so it's just a PNG image that takes the alpha and then just like applies that to a black on the screen and scales it up and down, or down and then back up. You could do that transition in the free version of DaVinci Resolve. I have a tutorial on how to do a very similar thing through on my YouTube page. Yeah, it's fairly easy to do. It's just like I just gonna make like one material to do it, and it's actually like super straightforward. But yeah, I wouldn't do that through DaVinci Resolve, because then I would need to bake that as a image sequence with alpha. Or I suppose I could do it just through Luminance, at which point I only need one channel. But it's easier to just use a PNG and do it in a shader. But yeah, so that is eventually going to be the level transition. So the thing that just has loading with a thrower for now, that's very temporary. Anyway, so what were we doing? I was getting the color from the Purple Dungeon doors and applying it to this one. So, question. This one still leads to 1 or 212, and it is inside 1.5. Man, these don't line up at all. That's fine. I can always move the door around. That's okay. 1.5 balcony. Let's just do a really quick walkthrough to see if all these doors work. Yeah, it's probably gonna be easier and cleaner to do it just all in Unreal. Like making a video video file of that is probably not a great idea for like real-time usage, but in the end it is just a Luma map or an alpha map. No, that one doesn't lead anywhere yet. So it's fairly straightforward. Ooh, that's, you see, that's not what I... There we go. Ask you need mouse PNG and animated in the shader or timeline. Well, I'm actually thinking about it now. It doesn't even need to be a PNG. It could just be a JPEG. Because we're thinking to use the alpha, but we only need it for transparency. So you can very much just make it a PNG or a JPEG, which saves a little bit of VRAM. And just use the luminance as an alpha matte. Well, that was a thing. What the fuck? Oh, yeah. So what you would do is I would make a material for the UI, set it to, I don't know, can you set those to mask mode or are those always translucent? We'll look into that in a moment. That's actually interesting. And just set the alpha to being derived from the luminosity of the icon. And then set the icon's UVs to scale in and out based on a parameter. And then just animate that parameter through a timeline in the widget. So that way you don't need it to have an alpha channel. What the fuck? That makes sense. This one should be 212. So this is the downside to this level loading system, is if you accidentally fuck up some of the naming, some of the picks for the levels, things can get confusing quite quickly. Because it still does unload the level that you're in. And it still does load the level that you're telling it to load. But if it doesn't have, it probably should have some sort of way to handle it by default. Like if it can't find anything, it just picks one at a random or something. I don't know. So now this leads to... There we go. So now we can go back and forth between these dungeons. As long as the domain is UI, then you can set it to masked. Yeah, so that way it doesn't even need to be translucent. It's just masked, so it's just yes or no. Is a pixel rendered or not? Well, they're all rendered, but yeah, you get the point, I think. Hopefully, maybe. I'm going to put this door back behind the wall, though, because I don't want people to be able to access that in the playtests. So, where does this go from here, right? Because we have... I think that leads us to this room over here, which, now that we are back to all this, let's move all of these things over just a tiny little bit more. Oh, that room back there is probably the next thing that we want to look at. That makes sense. So this is just literally a square room. And it's going to have a mini game to do with them, I just realized. What are we going to do with... Okay. The lore implication of this room is that this is cold storage for dead bodies. What in the world are we going to do as far as like a mini game mechanic? Or like... I call it a mini game. It's more of like a different genre shift. What are we going to do with that? Like, thematically, what genre of game lines up with cold storage of dead people? Like, do we make this a zombie shooter? Is that what we do? Because if we make one of the levels a zombie shooter, we have, like... way more sense to do that in here. So we have a little bit of an issue with the theme and like the implementation of all that. I guess transition is a bit different than I first thought. A detective game. I mean, I don't want to... it needs to be something that is easy and quick to both pick up for the player and for me to like develop. So I could just make something where you need to find a handful of clues, but I don't know that that's necessarily like engaging and fun. The point of these like minigame rooms is to have a break from the main game, so that the main game gets broken up a little bit from just mash, 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 mash the attack button. Sometimes a magic attack in between there. Sometimes you have to heal a little bit. But so much of the game is combat, and that's fine. Like, that's the main thing for the game. There's a little bit of platforming going on every now and then. But every dungeon also just needs to have something to break up the gameplay a little bit. But in a way that is not going to be too bothersome to either create or play. And I'm not entirely sure what we're going to do with that yet. For now, like for this dungeon, I have literally just decided that, hey, I'm going to put the key that you usually get through the minigame just in this hallway before the final boss door. Because there's supposed to be a room here that has a minigame. And I actually don't even... with you. That's kind of cool. I kind of like the idea of making the tomb slash mausoleum slash whatever the fuck you want to call this area have a mini game that's a zombie shooter. And it's Unreal Engine, right? Making a shooter game in Unreal Engine is so fucking easy. I can just make a first person character, slap a gun onto it, do some line traces, and that's it. right? Operation like the kids game. That's actually a fantastic idea. I I like that. That's kind of okay. I'm gonna keep that in mind. The other dungeon had those 6 skull towers. I think I removed that at some point. Well, they still exist in here. Well, we can do something um like a conveyor belt or something like that, where you like have to sort different bones. It's all a little bit morbid, isn't it? I guess that's what you get when you start the game off making the two things that are to do with death. After this, it's going to get a lot more like, well, I don't want to say grounded, but a little less depressing, hopefully. But I do kind of like the idea of having like, yeah. So what I'm thinking, right? As far as like perspective on lore goes, is there's kind of two types of enemies in the game, and those stem from two different factions within the people that used to live here. We've got the magical enemies, which is most of the enemies that I have so far, and then we've got the mechanical enemies. So if we just look at the like if we look at the base demon, for instance, right? This is like one of the magical enemies. It's more organic. It's like dark. It's very heartless adjacent, I will admit. But then if we look at the like flying golem, which I have renamed to be called a sentry, it's a lot more like hard surface and a lot more mechanical. Still with some like separate moving parts that like belong together. But you can almost believe that this is like magnetism more so than magic, right? I hope you can, because that's what I'm going to go with. And the reason that everybody's dead is because of a clash between like those two factions. So obviously the church is on the side of the magic, because this is a church area for anybody who hasn't been here for the past half an hour to an hour. Obviously the church would be on the side of the magic creatures, right? So maybe this is from like maybe this is the area where they used it. Okay, this is going to be again a bit morbid. Where they take the dead bodies of people and they magic them up into these monsters. So either they like transfigure these dead people into monsters, or they like take the soul out of them, because I still need also like to have a like an in-universe explanation of what experience is. And what I'm thinking right now is just it's soul power, because fucking Souls likes, right? And I'm not making exactly a Souls like, but I am pulling from Souls games a little bit. So what if the mini game here is a version of like a doctor game where you have to find leftover pieces of soul from those bodies? It can even reward you with some experience as a result of that, on top of the key if you find them all. Wolfenstein X Harry Potter. That's not a good description. That is. I mean, it's not untrue. It's not quite accurate, but it's also not untrue. So, kinda, maybe a little. 113, or 213 rather, or whatever the fuck this was. Wait, why is this 113 minigame? What the fuck? Okay, I have a different idea. We're gonna move this. We're also gonna make a streaming level for this at some point, because apparently I just put in the wrong streaming level. We're gonna put this up here, I think. For a couple of different reasons. It allows me to put in a couple of staircases to make this area a little bit more interesting to match up with this central area. It will put this minigame away from the dead people thing, so it gives me a little bit more creative freedom as to what I want to do with it. And if I still want to go with your transforming monsters, like this is going to be the boss room. This is going to be like the office of like the fucking high priest or something that you're going to have to fight. So the kind of shady shit happening with transforming people into monsters being quite literally next to that dude's office also still adds up, right? Would the player have to put the pieces together, or will it do an autocomplete? So I'm not entirely sure on that. Yeah. Well, I just don't know. I was gonna say what I'm thinking, but I'm not really thinking anything. I just don't know. I think it'd be funny to have a lot of parts scattered around and a task to make the right creature to open the door to the key. That's actually also a good idea. Will be a little more bothersome because then I would need to take a bunch of a bunch of my skeletal meshes and cut them up into either separate skeletal meshes, which it probably would need to be because you at that point I probably want to like be able to ragdoll the arms and stuff. Or I can just make them into pickups. Just like items on the floor that I can pick up. And then they can just be static meshes and they can exist in my inventory. Because I have an inventory now, so I might as well fucking use it. I've also been thinking, I know that we're doing level design, technically speaking, that's what the title says, but let's talk a little bit about game design as well. I've been thinking, right? Because I have an inventory in the game, and I also have editor preferences. I have an inventory in the game. I'm going to finish this thought at some point, I swear. I'm going into the game. Inventory, opening this thing up. Okay, only has 5 slots. It's supposed to have like 13. That's actually kind of weird. Oh, it's because I'm at level 0. Okay, let me try it again at a different one. This one. Open up the inventory. I have a certain amount of slots, right? It's an upgradable stat. So I can upgrade my inventory level. I can't do that right now because I don't have the stuff for it, but I can go into the shop, sell some stuff. Now I have enough experience. I can upgrade my inventory and I have more room in my inventory. But at some point, I also made a chest blueprint that I can open up. Well, actually, I don't think... Maybe I can't. Maybe I don't have a keyboard mapping for that. Hold on. Well, just believe me that you can open up the chest. But, and this is the thing, if you can open up chests, that means that you can store your items in those chests, which makes it potentially kind of worthless to upgrade your inventory, because you just have inventories laid around in the world for you. Now the question becomes, do I care about that? Because I think that might accidentally also be kind of a cool way to go about doing it. Because that could be like its own type of almost challenge run, right? Where you don't upgrade your inventory, but the items that you want to keep around, you put them in chests along the way. So that you don't have to upgrade your inventory stat too much. And then when you want to go get an item, you need to go back to the place where you stored that item and go pick it up. At which point, the inventory stat upgrade literally is just a luxury thing, so it's just a waste of experience. So technically speaking, you shouldn't ever upgrade your inventory, but it's gonna be annoying if you don't. And the wonderful thing about this ID is if I end up going with this, I can very easily make it so that you can't put items into chests, if I decide to do that. But if I go with this more open approach, my inventory system already saves every inventory in the game when a level gets unloaded. So all the chests already have their own unique ID that they get loaded in and out by. Because they need to remember whether or not they've been looted. That was the initial ID. But you can also put items back into them, and it will also save that, obviously. And I kind of like that ID. Yeah, so, and then for the minigame, if you have like a couple of arms and legs, you can just have an inventory that is laid out like a body. And you're right, just putting the pieces in the right place. That's so much easier to program. Than having it being like a point and click thing. That's what the first thing I was thinking about, is making it a point and click minigame where all the body parts like ragdoll and stuff like that. But again, I need this to remain a somewhat like realistic to make in a week kind of thing. Because the development like timeline for this entire game already is way too long. So I don't need to bloat it up by making minigames that take me 2 or 3 months each to develop. Bypassing that is soulbound items that cannot be stored in chests. I mean, that is fairly easily implementable as well, yeah. Like either just as per item metadata, so that it also is removable potentially, or just burnt into the item class itself, like just a bull. Soulbound or a bull can be stored in chest on the class itself, and then it can be easily even changed per asset. Or again, it can be part of the metadata, so that it can be done on a per like actual inventory slot basis. I don't know about all that yet, but that's something that I've been thinking about over the last couple of weeks. Is I made these chests, but I've been kind of hesitant to put them down in places with like loot. So what I've been doing instead is just placing items down in the world, and that's still going to be a thing that I'll do. But sometimes having chests with a couple of slots, and the thing is, if a chest has 5 slots and it has 5 items in it, you're not actually gaining any new inventory slots unless you already had some of those items and they can stack together, right? Because if we load this back up, and like this chest has a bunch of inventory slots in it, which I can't show. Fuck. Let me plug in my controller. Hold on one moment. I'll also need to open up DS4 Windows because Sony sucks. Okay, it's purple. So, I can walk up to this and actually, oh, the touchscreen stuff. Open up this chest, and this chest has like 10 slots, right? But it only has 3 items in it initially, which I'll actually just show you by playing through the start of the game real quick. Won't be that long. Like full screen, why not? Okay, that's one motherfucker down. And now we can just kind of like dash through and be good. So, got a bit of tutorialization here. I can open up this chest and it has 3 items in it, right? But if it only had 3 slots, fantastic. I can now move these 3 items into my inventory where they take up 3 slots. So unless I already had any of these items and that makes it stackable, it doesn't actually offer up any more new item slots. So I would have to be careful to not put in too many common items into these chests and that kind of stuff. But even like taking that into account, you can decrease the likelihood of a chest actually providing you any new storage options. Like if I put like 2 very rare items and 1 more common item in here, I've given you 3 items, but I've effectively most likely only given you 1 extra slot. And it will be an extra inventory slot that you have to go out of your way to go back and forth with to like actually get items for. So I actually think that it's not even that broken. I think it's a pretty fun idea. I'm not 100% decided on it yet. These are on the position level. They shouldn't be, but fine. But that's something that I'm thinking, maybe that could be cool. Anyway, this needs to lead into, I think, the like main mineshaft tower area. So the thing with this is it's gonna be big. And it's gonna have a lot of like side detours and stuff. Like this is gonna be a pretty big platforming level, and but I'm not gonna make it today because I very likely will stream building this platforming challenge. So what we're gonna do today, just setting up the rough dimensions of the main shaft, because the idea that I have, man, this is very specific. I don't know how many of you are gonna get this, but who here knows the Toy Story 2 video game for the PlayStation 1? Because the levels in that game are all fairly vertical, but there's one level in particular which is, I think, a ventilation shaft. While I choke on my own bit, I'm sorry about that. A ventilation shaft or something like that, where you have to like, there's one main shaft that runs through the center of the level, and then you make your way through like, almost like branches of that to get up a little bit higher. And then you get to a new area of the main ventilation shaft, and maybe you unlock a shortcut or something like that. The wonderful thing about that, especially with the way that I want to design this, is that it is an actual like platforming challenge to circle your way all the way up and every so often come across the actual center to see the progress that you've been making. But going down is as easy as just jumping down, because it's all connected to this centralized area. Yeah, it is a very niche reference. Maybe I can find some footage of it. Hold on. Toy Story 2 PS1. Same as in the Bugs Life game and the Toy Soldiers game. There were a lot of platforms. Wouldn't surprise me if those were the same developers, to be honest, because the Bugs Life game and Toy Story 2 are fairly similar in the way that they play in a lot of ways. Bugs Life is a little bit more puzzly, which is kind of cool. The game's only 2 hours of gameplay long. It's kind of... Sure. Let me see if I can find the level I'm talking about real quick. So this is the toy store. That's the boss fight in that level, I believe. No, it's the kitchen. Yeah, so we have... EVG, fuck off. I think it's this level. Oh, this might be the airport, actually. Hold on. Yeah, this is the airport. I might have already gone past it, because I think... Yeah, dude's just backtracking at this point. Oh, there we go. I think that's it. That was it. So yeah, you have like all of these like side rooms almost, and of course it's going to be smaller for me because it's just going to be like one room in a bigger dungeon. But you have all this like side room to make progress, and then eventually you get back through after gaining some height to like the main mineshaft area. There we go, and you can see that you're suddenly higher up. But if you want to go, please go back down. No, not that way. I guess there's no reason for you to be going back down. That makes sense. See if he makes it to the central area again at some point. So yeah, I think this is the very top of the... I think I keep calling it a mineshaft because in my game it'll be a mineshaft. But yeah, so he just, I think, turned on the platforms that allow you to easily like go back up and down. So there will be one strip of platforms that will always be moving up and one that will always be moving down. I don't have full damage in the game, so for me it's just like literally just jump down if you want to go down. But this is an entire level built around this like verticality and slowly making your way around this centralized structure, which is really quite cool. So that's kind of what I want to do with this level. But again, we have like an hour at most for this stream to go, so we're not going to do all that because that would be insane. So let's just change my streaming level to the right one, and then what I'll do is I will just not that one, put it roughly in place. Might actually be nice to just set this one to be world aligned again, because sometimes it can just be a pain when things aren't world aligned for like the rotation stuff. It needs to be a little bit bigger than my initial size. However tall it might be, we'll figure out at some point, I'm sure. But for a placeholder, this should be good enough. It'll be very tall, though. It will be very tall. It'll also probably be more square. So let's set it to... Well, let's just set it to 4,000 by 4,000. Nice round numbers. My side effect of that is that the walls will... Oh. Snapping, please. Just fit in like... Well, kind of. So I think that this level in and of itself, again, is going to be what we maybe do through the entirety of next week on streams. Because I really want to give this the time it deserves, because it's a really, like, nice idea, I think. But yeah, so we have, I think, occasion to be that this is already at the highest point in the entire, not just this dungeon, the entire game. Like, the dungeon as a whole starts with going upstairs, and then to even reach this area, you need to go up another staircase, and I might actually even put it up higher than it is right now. And then you platform a very tall structure. So by the time you get up, like, to the top, you will be up so fucking high. And then the implication is that the final boss fight takes place even above that. Lots of love and care being put into it. Well, at the very least, I don't know about care. I don't know. Yeah, lots of love and care. You don't work on something for as long as I've been working on this without putting in, like, some amount of care, right? Because I could have been working on literally anything else. And yet my brain chose to do this, so fucking here we are. I could be playing Palworld right now. Just saying. The things I sacrifice for you guys. It's been kind of unhealthy for me the last couple of days, I'm not gonna lie. It's been fun. But you know what else is fun? Heroin. I don't know, that feels like... I'm not going to clip it to make that into a short, but that feels like it would clip into a short very well. And I'm level 45 or something like that. I feel like that is not a level that you should be after 3 days. I think I'm 44 actually, not 45. So it's not that bad. I doubled the amount of hours I have in Palworld in like 3 days. Help that I didn't get lost as in, like, did again. And Palworld stream, but fucking here we go. I will say about Palworld is that its level scaling is kind of wank in a lot of ways. Because it doesn't really have... Like, the level scaling in Palworld, in a lot of ways, doesn't follow like a linear thing. It doesn't even really follow an exponential curve. What it kind of does is it has like slight linearity and then it has a step. And a slight linearity, then it has a step. This is kind of how the level progression in Palworld goes. So you go smooth, you go smooth, you go smooth. Then you just end up against a block where you're like, okay, so what the fuck do I do now? Which you eventually overcome, and then you go fairly linearly again, and then it happens again, and again, and again, and again. And the first one isn't that bad, because of course the game doesn't expect you to like go in super hard, and it's effectively the end of the tutorial. Starting around this area, it's kind of a slap in the face anytime you get to one of these like spikes. And these spikes work fairly well to effectively like section off parts of the game, because if you can't get past this, everything past it is not going to work. And the thing is, it's an open world game, right? So this structure Happens in every fucking direction. But with slightly different steps. So if you start relatively south in the map, right? So you start here. In this direction, it goes that, and then it goes up a little bit, and then it goes up a little bit, and then it goes up a lot. Because what it expects you to do is then also, from your starting point, like from here, it expects you to, and then it goes a little bit up, and then it goes a little bit up, and it goes a little bit up, and then it goes all the way the fuck up again. So what it expects you to do, as far as like level progression goes, is follow this path until you get fucked, and then go through this path until you get fucked, at which point you're now high enough level to do this. Downside is, since it's an open world game, there is a very small chance that you actually end up on the path that they want you to end up on. There is one decent way to tell though. Since I last played, they have added the like PAL expedition thing, and that one just literally tells you the order that it expects you to do like the bosses in. So you just do it in that order. That's the leveling curve that they want you to go through. That helps a lot. Because without that, you're kind of lost as to where to go. And that's kind of the thing. You're right. Most games, at least like most RPGs, follow that graph, right? Where they're fairly linear up until a boss fight, and then they spike up. And then everything after that boss fight kind of just picks up a difficulty where that boss fight left off. Right? A little lower. But there's a definite spike. But most of those games oftentimes are fairly linear when they choose that level progression. The fact that this happens in 360 degrees all directions around you kind of makes it hard to find what the game wants you to do. Did you ever get into Ark Survival Evolved? Nope. I imagine that it has similar issues. Let's make this a little slimmer. The fact that it does this with resources as well, but sometimes it can really like stall you, that's much less of an issue for me. For some reason. Like, I don't really mind that. That is fine. Maybe if you play like tycoonish progression games, that kind of just happens a lot. But again, it's the fact that it's an open world game which makes it a little bit more tricky, because how the fuck am I supposed to know where to go, what direction to go to get the resources that I need to get? And I mean, there is no that designers know that you can look things up, and they count on the fact that you. If I like that, to be super honest with you, what that definitely is, and you wouldn't be entirely wrong about. Similarly, yes, the game gets fucked. Does the same thing with Dynasty Chain, because you can't get them because of your level. The end game is just boss fight though. Yeah. I mean, it's not necessarily wrong. It's just bad. think of as a well-designed like game progression. But the core game loop is so fucking entertaining and fun to play through that it doesn't matter that much. It also did this well. But even without it does well enough. So some of your messages in Discord about pals used for resources, that's how our game plays as well. Donors get resources better than others. I mean, that's fine. Like that's not really like an issue. That's just progression, right? The thing that But the thing that surprised me most is and they do that very well. The passive experience that your base generates just by merit of doing like production tasks. When you get a new pal, like when you hatch one from an egg, for instance, when you add it to either your like, not quite the level of the rest of your team, which is good. The rest is level 40. My team is roughly around level 40 at the moment. But like within a minute, my newly added pal was like level 15 and then level 20. Meaning that it was actually like immediately useful and didn't have to just chill out in my team. Which is really nice because that means that you are very free around your team whenever you like feel like you can get an upgrade, especially since your team also functions as things like your mount. And frankly, half my team is built around movement, and the other half is just things that do a fuck ton of damage. I generally have like one flyer, one runner. I should have one glider, but I'm still just using the item for that, to be honest with you. But I could do that with a pal as well, I suppose. And then one thing that just deals a fuck ton of damage on its own. And then one thing that I can ride and deal a fuck ton of damage with. And that's my team. I mean, I don't mind grindy games. Those are the types of games that sadly are just and making me think that stats on a video game screen actually matter in any way, which means that I play them for like 10 hours in a day. But hey, I got to do something for the next week and 2 days until Final Fantasy VII releases, so it's pretty good. I don't mind it that much. And like, given it another week, even if I don't play it as intensely as I did last weekend, because like videos do need to be made and work. Given it another week, I probably will be. I imagine. Okay. Let's see. That's the door to the central platforming. So that's 2 for platforming. And I'm going to move this to still be somewhat physically in line with everything else, especially since I cannot load the map that I drew up for this, which is really kind of annoying. I want this to make some amount of sense. So I might actually move that to there. We'll see. Artificial rates, they will... nope. Not a clue. So yeah, this entire dungeon so far is already proving to be like a lot more vertical, and I actually quite like that. It's also starting to look like quite nice to have these two things side by side and actually seeing like the color differences and stuff. It's just satisfying. Now, from here, I suppose we go back into this one, into 2.4. Platforming. Copy this fucker over, and I'm just gonna yoink your transform and put you in the middle. Ish. And then this one leads to 212. Right? Long central room. That's an accurate name, if nothing else. I feel like there's got to be something like happening in here. We will definitely need to put this. So maybe even put this down a little lower in some back up and whatever. Because it only being staircases that lead up, I think it also needs to, you need to feel it in the gameplay that you're going up, right? So making this into an area which has like a little bit of platforming, like this entire dungeon leaning a little bit more on platforming from place to place is probably going to be a good idea. It takes 4 literal days of real time. What the hell? Already just no. Like, unless you are actually an MMO, just no. Making it an MMO? But if it's also a survival game, that's... Oh man, I don't know that survival MMOs are a good idea. For the exact reason that you say, like, if there's a lot of like players around, or even NPCs for that matter, that could like ruin something that takes that long. You can't have it both ways. Well, you can. It being good. I'm just doing this very rough, by the way. I don't know what we'll do with the ceilings here. For now, just gonna close it up so people don't see the black void. Not even because it looks ugly, but because it does weird. And also because it looks weird. Because I don't really have a sky dome or anything like that. Because you don't see the sky because everything is supposed to be underground, which makes a lot of the lighting actually quite annoying in the game, believe it or not. It's MMO survival. People who play official servers are locked in. That's a funny way to spell unemployed. But there's options for personal service, but survival and servers are 24/7. No windows to the void. Disappointed. I might make. I've been thinking that I do want to make I actually do want to make a sky sphere around the entire game, and the sky, and that actually will just say, you shouldn't see this. So if anybody manages to break the game, they just get to see a texture that says, you shouldn't see this. Maybe it's just IRL survival. I mean, in the spirit of it being a survival game, that actually isn't a bad idea. It's very, dystopian in a lot of ways. It's kind of like a non-VR Sword Art Online at that point. Except the other way around, I suppose. It's not when you die in the game, you die in real life, but when you die in... Yeah. I'll make you a solid. We will make windows. I'll just fill them with stained glass so that you can't see through them. Because we're in a church, so this is the area to make windows. Also, it's just kind of difficult to make fun-looking lighting without being able to rely on things like... It's sunlight! Every light needs to have some sort of, motivation behind it. Why is this light here? After I finish this game, I'm gonna be a fucking master in lighting up, digital scenes. I just want to check if all the doors work everywhere, and yeah, you see, there's so much room here to put in interesting, fun platforming and make this go up a little higher. And maybe if I make this go up a little higher, we don't need this first staircase. We can just use this height to be the end of the platforming. Yeah, ignore the fact that this doesn't have a ceiling and that there's a hole there. Ignore all that. Does this work? Yes, it does. Okay. So this is going to be a very, very tall challenge where you have to platform up and then around and then through and then up and then through and then up and then through and then up and then around and then through. And okay, let's actually put those things in the right streaming level. It's this. Should all go to there. There. And then this one as well. Okay, and then this one needs to be 100 units lower down. And then... technically it doesn't need this, but let's just do it just to be safe. It's kind of embarrassing that all that we did in this stream so far, we did a lot of brainstorming, we did a lot of thinking and consideration and stuff, but aside from that, all that we did is make this rectangle. Now we make this rectangle that has two rectangles coming off of it. And now we make this rectangle that leads into this rectangle, that leads into this rectangle, and now we make this rectangle. And it's been 2 hours. I'm so productive. But we need to put all these play spaces in place before we can actually start doing the actual level design on them. So I know all that, but it still feels bad. So I think next branch to do is going up here. and making this area. But I don't remember what the whole idea behind this area was. I think this is literally just our room. So, like, this would be the entrance of the church. And then this, I feel like this would be, maybe we can do something like that. I feel like this would be the normal way that people would go. And then this would be maybe like, I don't know. I know churches don't have reception areas, but let's just imagine that. And then, like, this is an employee entrance because it leads right into the area that goes into the graveyard. And even more than that, it leads into the area of the graveyard that itself is supposed to be a fairly inaccessible place, right? Why the graveyard has a maze in it, don't think about it. So if we had like a locked door in here that we could like put an item deeper down into this dungeon for, that might be fun. Yeah, I'm just going to put that in there real quick, actually, as a... So that'll be in... 2-2 hallway. Can I just put a text actor in or something? Text runner actor. There we go. Imagine a locked door here. Image a locked door. Good enough. Fantastic. It looks real shit due to the outlines, but it's a way to leave a note for myself, right? It's like a development comment. Is it just me who's in love with the red tiling? I kind of like the red color. It's I don't know. It's a lot less soothing than the purple, but that's maybe kind of the idea. Obviously, these are block mesh textures, but the red color theme is going to stick around throughout the entire like dungeon, just the same way that this entire dungeon, once the artisan plays, still is going to have a purple theme. A lot less like super in your face than this. It's mostly going to be normal assets that have color purple more in them, and then mostly the lighting is going to be more so purple. And the same thing here with red. But it looks kind of... yeah, so this is the way that people would actually go when going to the church. And then this would be like the actual entrance area, where they... Like, I'm not religious, so I don't know what the fuck happens when you go into a church. Is there somebody there to say hello? Like a doorman? Maybe just vibing with the color as it's lit in the... Yeah. But that's kind of what I'm thinking here. Is this is just where me needed it. Yeah, I need to talk to like some people that have ever been in a church outside of like tourism. Because I've been in like old churches and cathedrals and that kind of stuff as a tourist. But that doesn't really help me now, does it? Maybe in a mega church. Well, this is supposed to be like the only church for the entirety of this society, so and it's big enough to be an entire dungeon in my game, so it would be mega in a certain way. The point being is that this itself is going to be a fairly simple room, if that's the case. Where they just like enter and like something like that. Like the same way that as a Christian you might have like a cross, because the whole religion here is based on trying to like dig up. I imagine that they would be given shovels, but since the shovel is like more expensive and actually utilitarian in this case, than like a little necklace on a cross, maybe it's something that like the church just gives you when you enter and you like return when you leave or something, right? So maybe like you pick up your shovel here for praying. I don't know. I'm just making this up as I go. So that can be this area, say. But we do need to have a little bit of gameplay here, because at this point we have entered this dungeon. We've dungeon or whatever. If we go through this dungeon through here, right? We've entered here. There's not really any gameplay here. This is just supposed to feel imposing. Then we come up to here, where there's a gameplay element here. We need to have like a secret key, which we don't have. That's fine. So we go here. It's not really any gameplay either. By the time we get here, we need to have some gameplay going on. So I imagine what ends up happening here is maybe just some light, like I don't know. Then we have like a hallway here. This is going to be fairly like simple. Again, then like mining equipment. So this is just entirely an optional area. Likely go be farm if you want to. Maybe like pick up a special item, or like putting a special spell here. Ooh, probably like the mind spray spell could be put there, because we have like explosive mining, TNT mining. That could be kind of cool. Then this area over here, like I don't know what these other rooms are supposed to be anymore, and I can't open a map to look at it. Well, I'll need to re-download Inkscape, because I think I did write in things for that. And this is just like another staircase up. And I'm thinking that instead of making this just a staircase, this should probably be fairly platforming heavy to get up to. But functionally, it's essentially just another hallway. But that leaves these two rooms. Like, what are these two rooms? I guess, like, this room back here can be, like, the actual, like, religious practice area. Where they actually, like, do their religion. They do a religion. Can you tell that I haven't gone, like, to church ever? And then this is effectively foreplay, I guess. I don't know. I kind of feel like my brain is not braining enough to come up with this stuff right now. Well, I came up with this at some point, and now I just gotta like remember what I did or like modify it. But I guess that's the second half of this, and then when we get here, this together is the office of, well, I guess this included then, is the office of like the high priest or whatever. Shoe deposit washing place. That's a fantastic idea. Especially, yes. Thank you. Especially since it is actually connected to the mine shaft where they would be digging up. And we have like this area going down here. And presumably they would want you to wash up before going into like the actual, like, I'm going to call it the holy place for now, okay? Hopefully nobody's offended by this. That makes entirely sense, because people, like, when this was active, would have been working here in like the dirt and this, and stone, and they would be getting like dirty, sweaty, all kind of messed up. So even aside from the fact that, like, based on like real religions where you like wash up out of respect before going in, like this would doubly have that going on for it, I think. So this being essentially like a washing place, I don't want to call it like a shower room, because that like sounds maybe a little different. Makes a lot of sense. That is a fantastic idea. Thank you. Perfect. I like that. So I'm going to change the names of these levels, because this is just called 2-8 connecting room. Right? That's bad. So since we don't have any like doors referencing these yet, we can just fairly easily rename these, I think. Right? Oh, I guess we need to rename them here in my levels. Red. Okay, so this would be 2-8. 2-8. I'm going to call it washing room. And then hopefully this doesn't break everything. Nope. Updates perfectly. Okay, so speaking of respectfully handling religious themes, the combat trial is going to be in the place where people pray. Maybe change that around to being here. That feels a little bit more appropriate, I would say. Maybe. And then, yeah. Because this is literally called 2-7 extra room 1. So this will be storage, combat trial. Why is 1-6 block out a level here? I don't know. And then this will be 2-9 combat trial will change into 2-9 holy place. Very descriptive. Very descriptive. Straight hallway stairs, that's fine. 2-4 platforming, that's fine. 2-3, it's called wide hall. What the fuck? I guess this will be entrance hall. Just so that when I come back to this on Thursday, know what the fuck all of these rooms are supposed to be. Combat trials, fine. Washing room, all that is fine. Then we have pre-boss room, boss room, and then we have this one for the mini game. which is still in one. Okay, yeah, I think that's where we're gonna leave it for now. So yeah, we didn't do a lot of like actual hands-on building of levels. We only like make this one little route through here. But we did do a lot of deciding and a lot of brainstorming, and all that kind of stuff is very important to do before you actually commit to anything. And we have some levels that may clip through each other a little bit, but again, only one of them is going to be loaded at a time, so that's fine. That's what I tell myself to feel better. So yeah, I think that's gonna do it for today. It's a little bit of a shorter one compared to a lot of streams, but again, my brain isn't fully braining, and I need some time to think about what we're gonna do with all the rooms that we have left, and then we still like will need to like fine tune and tweak the rooms that we have here and all that kind of stuff. But that's future me's problem. So on Thursday, we'll be back doing, well, maybe not the other half in its entirety, but, well, maybe we will. For like general blockouts, I think we can get through doing this, maybe this, and these two should be fairly easy as well. And then next week, we'll probably start implementing actual gameplay elements, so moving things around a little bit and actually making them like fun to play. We'll probably start doing this platforming challenge, which is going to be the difficult bit, I think, to like design and test and have fun with. So yeah, for the next month or so, we're probably going to fairly red-colored blocks. Thanks for streaming instead of playing Palworld. Well, it was hard, okay? It was hard to do. And after I end the stream, I'm going to have a snack. And I'm probably going to like play Palworld for another 2 hours before I go to bed. And it's probably going to become like another 4 hours because that's just how my fucking brain works. So it's been a fun one. See you on Thursday and have a good one.